The New York Islanders have learned that Mathew Barzal is out indefinitely, but how will this change the team's approach at the trade deadline and for the rest of the season? We've got all that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers. Great to have you here on the Locked On Islanders podcast on what has been a difficult day for Islanders fans. Why? Well, the Islanders gave us the injury updates we've been waiting for. Everydayers, yesterday on the show, you heard me say we expected an injury update some point on Monday. It came, and, well, we had 2 players we were waiting for updates on. Scott Mayfield, lower body injury, and day-to-day. That means we could see Mayfield as early as before the Four Nations break. There are still 3 games left, or they could hold him out and see if he's ready after. But at least on the surface, doesn't sound like long-term. However, Mathew Barzal, the other player who wasn't available Sunday after being injured Saturday, out indefinitely with a lower body injury. No Barzal indefinitely means certainly after Four Nations, probably after the trade deadline, maybe for the rest of the season. It's a devastating blow to a New York Islanders team that has already been dealing with an unbelievably ridiculous, and I do mean ridiculous, number of injuries. And right now, it's like the Islanders' injured list is longer than the guys who are healthy. Mike Riley, been out since, November 1st. Semyon Varlamov, out indefinitely. Hudson Fasching, on IR. Noah Dobson, on IR. Ryan Pollock, on IR. Marcus Hogberg, IR. Mathew Barzal, day-to-day officially, or out indefinitely now, officially, expect him to be placed on IR or LTIR very soon. Scott Mayfield, day-to-day. This team right now is at a crossroads, and they need to figure out what they're going to do for the rest of this season. I have some ideas as to what they should do. I think a lot of fans share those thoughts, but at the same time, we are not the ones making the decisions. The decisions are made by Lou Lamoriello. And we know that Lou Lamoriello does not believe in retooling or rebuilding. He wants to go all in to make the playoffs every year. And we know right now that the New York Islanders are 4 points out of the second wild card with 1 game in hand, where both Detroit and Columbus have 59 points in 53 games. The Islanders have 55 points in 52 games. Meanwhile, though, 7 points separate the first wild card, second wild card, because both of them have the same number of points, and the 15th team in the conference out of 16, which right now is the Philadelphia Flyers. Realistically, only one team is completely out of the hunt in the Eastern Conference for a wild card spot, and that is the Buffalo Sabres, who are a dozen points out of a wild card spot with one game remaining. So, realistically, you're talking about 9 teams battling for 2 playoff spots. The Islanders just had a 7-game win streak that came to an end on Sunday, and they still weren't in a playoff spot, and they didn't gain a lot of ground. They gained, 2 points, 3 points in the standings over the course of that 7-game winning streak, because there are so many other teams. There are 3-point games, games that go to overtime, games that go to shootouts, and you're not getting the full, it's hard to make up points when you've got that many teams to fight, and there are games where both the team that wins and the team that loses are going to get points. Here is my concern. I believe that Lou Lamoriello is probably going to place Mathew Barzal and his $9 million and change salary on LTIR, which will give the Islanders a lot of cap space to work with for the rest of this season. My fear is, though, that he goes out and tries to make a big trade to add a big piece. I don't think Elias Pettersson is available anymore now that JT Miller has been traded off the Canucks. Brock Besser may be a name who is available. There may be some other names. But realistically, the one thing I do not want to see is the Islanders trade their number 1 pick or some top prospects in a desperate attempt again to squeeze into 8th place in the conference and make the playoffs. Even if the Islanders finish strong and make the postseason, again, the odds are they would either face the Florida Panthers or the Washington Capitals in the first round. Maybe they get the second wild card and they can, face the other one of those 2 teams. Maybe Toronto beats out Florida. Maybe Carolina catches Washington. But realistically right now, Florida and Washington are the 2 teams they would be most likely to face, one of them in the first round. The Islanders have pending unrestricted free agents in Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. Nelson has already indicated, according to multiple sources, that he wants to test the free agent market. You cannot lose Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri for nothing. You can't hold on to those guys in some attempt to beat the odds and make the wild card, especially if you don't have Mathew Barzal. It is almost like the hockey gods are saying to the New York Islanders, this is not your year. The list of players who have missed time with injury: Adam Pelech, Ryan Pollock, Anthony Duclair, Mathew Barzal now twice, Semyon Varlamov. We've been through the list. So many guys who have been hurt at different times this season. Romanov was out. Riley. All these players who have been out. And Lou Lamoriello, to his credit, did a good job of filling in the void on defense. Getting some guys who could contribute right away without paying a lot. Signing a free agent out of the KHL in D'Angelo. Sending a conditional 5th-round pick in 2026 to get Perunovic. Getting Boqvist off waivers. These are low-cost stopgap measures that actually I think have made the team better. But to replace Mathew Barzal on a team that is already struggling to score, the Islanders are ranked 25th in the NHL in goals scored, and they are dead last on the power play still. Being a GM in the salary cap era is all about asset management. Every team has the same amount of money to work with. You need to maximize your return on your investment for those assets and field the best team possible with the goal of maintaining success over the long haul. There are times when you need to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. There are times when you take all your chips and put them in the middle of the poker table and you say, we're going for it. Right now is one of those times when you probably have to take 1 step back to take 2 steps forward. And I am not saying under any circumstances the Islanders should quit on this season. Every game, regardless of who is in the lineup and who is out of the lineup, the players have to go out there and give their all and do their best to try to win as many hockey games as they can. That's their job. That's why they're getting paid, and that's what we want to see. But to acquire another player at the cost of the future on a team that has been stuck in the muddy middle for 4 years now, hasn't won a playoff series in 4 years, doesn't make sense. Extending guys like Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri, unless you can extend them for 2 years, maybe 3, doesn't make sense. And I'll tell you right now, if I'm Brock Nelson or Kyle Palmieri and I can be a free agent and get a 5-year deal, I'm not taking a 2 or 3-year deal from the Islanders. If Brock Nelson has actually said to Lou Lamoriello, I want to explore the free agent market, and Lou Lamoriello does not move him at the trade deadline or before it, that is just malpractice by an NHL GM. Now, if the Islanders were where, some of the elite teams in the league are right now, I could see making that big move. If the Islanders were the Florida Panthers or the Vegas Golden Knights or, the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Washington Capitals, go for it. But do not chase good money after bad. It only will come back to haunt this hockey team. We're going to discuss a little bit more about the situation, what the Islanders can and should do. We had some good news, some honors for Ilya Sorokin. We'll also preview tonight's big game against the Vegas Golden Knights. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, a winger who was with the Islanders in the early to mid-2000s, enjoyed a 30-goal season in 01-02. Let's see if you can guess who that is. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from opening kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sports partner of Super Bowl 59. So, Mathew Barzal out indefinitely. And here's the first question I have to ask, and there's a lot of questions, and everydayers, we're going to talk about this for a few days, okay? This is not something that is going away anytime soon. Brock Nelson, considered one of the most in-demand trade targets available at the deadline. Based on the horrible, horrible injury luck this team has had all year, can you let him go to Four Nations and risk injury in the Four Nations tournament? Based on the Islanders' luck this year, I would say the answer is no. Islander fans will remember what happened with John Tavares at the Olympics about a decade ago. Got hurt in the Olympics, missed the rest of the season. The Islanders fell out of playoff contention, missed the playoffs on a year they probably would have made it with a healthy John Tavares. Does that mean that Lou Lamoriello tries to either sign or trade Brock Nelson before the tournament starts? Or does he tell Brock Nelson, no, you can't play in the Four Nations tournament? I don't know. Lou Lamoriello's expression has always been, if you have time, use it. But does he really have time now? There are 3 games left before the Four Nations tournament break. Tonight, Islanders hosting Vegas. Then at Winnipeg, at Minnesota. That's 2 elite teams and 1 very good team. 2 of the 3 on the road. As I mentioned in the first segment, you win 2 or 3 in a row, you could be in the playoff spot or very close to it. You lose, you go 0-2-1 in those 3 games, let's say, you could be 8 points out with 7 teams to pass. How the Islanders play in these 3 games may very well go a long way to determining what Lou Lamoriello decides to do. His inclination is to buy. That is always his preference, it seems. He needs to sell if Brock Nelson is not coming back. And keep in mind this. Brock Nelson did not say, according to the sources that we have all heard, he did not say, I do not want to play again for the New York Islanders. That is not what he said. He said, I want to explore the free agent market this summer. Now, that could mean you trade Brock Nelson, and if you really want him back, you could reacquire him, sign him as a free agent. But again, it doesn't make sense based on the term, based on the length of the contract. You don't want to sign Brock Nelson to a 5, 6, 7-year deal. You don't even want to sign him to a 4-year deal. Yes, he's gotten better with age. He is not on pace for 30 goals this year. Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 to 25. Maybe he gets hot. Maybe he can get it up to 27. But let's say 24, 25 goals over the course of this year. Any contract with a player who is 33, you might get value in the first year, the second year, but then it's a question of diminishing returns. It is always better, the cliche in sports goes, it is always better to trade a player a year too soon than a year too late. This team, during the 7-game win streak, has showed what it's capable of when everything comes together and they play their best hockey. Keep in mind that you're not always going to play your best hockey. You're never as good as you are on a winning streak. You're never as bad as you are on a losing streak. And that injuries are a part of the game. So that you need to have the depth in your organization to cover when injuries strike. The Islanders didn't have it. Lou had to scramble, and he did a good job. But the Islanders just don't have the players in Bridgeport to get the job done. At the end of the day, this team needs to not double down and try to make the playoffs this year if it means sacrificing the future. Now, if you can trade Brock Nelson for a guy who could help right away as part of the deal, because you definitely want picks and prospects, and that player better be younger than Brock Nelson by a fair amount, okay, I have no objection to that. You get me a player who's just as good as Brock Nelson, but he's 25 instead of 33, I'm all in. But if you're sacrificing the future to try to squeeze into the playoffs this year when you probably won't have Mathew Barzal and all the other injured players, that is the worst thing Lou Lamoriello can do. And I hope against hope that that is not the direction he takes this team in. Everydayers, you will remember I said weeks ago that this team is at a crossroads. The franchise is at a crossroads. And that the first 7 or 8 months of 2025 will determine what direction they go in. That got even more difficult to navigate now. Retooling makes the most sense for the New York Islanders in so many ways. And now the question is, will Lou do it? Got to add one little piece of good news quickly. Ilya Sorokin named the NHL's first star of the week. He was 3-0-0 with a 1.33 goals against average and a 9.53 save percentage. That was the week that ended on Sunday. So congratulations to Ilya Sorokin. That was a little bit of good news for Islander fans. Now they need him to keep it going. All right, more to get to on today's show. We'll preview tonight's game against the Vegas Golden Knights, and we will have our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from our hosts, Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Islanders play their last home game before the Four Nations tournament break, and it's a tough one. They will host the Vegas Golden Knights, 7:30 tonight. Maybe they're catching Vegas at the right time. Vegas has lost 3 games in a row. Just lost their last game on Sunday to the Rangers at Madison Square Garden by a score of 4-2. They also lost to Columbus and to Dallas, with both of those games being 1-goal decisions. Keep this in mind, though. Vegas tied for first place in the Pacific Division. 15 games over NHL 500. They're technically in second place because they have played one more game than the Edmonton Oilers, but this is an elite hockey team. And the numbers back it up. Goals for, they are 4th in the NHL. Goals against, they are top 10, they're 10th. Power play, 2nd in the NHL. And the Islanders' suddenly better penalty kill will be tested. The penalty kill, they're a little below average. They're 21st in the league at 77%. Maybe, just maybe, the Islanders can benefit from that. We know the names on this team: Jack Eichel, Tomas Hertl, Mark Stone, Shea Theodore, Ivan Barbashev, Alex Pietrangelo. This is a talented group of players. They have 8 players on their roster right now with 10 or more goals on the season. They are deep. They are balanced. They are skilled. They are big. Here are the line combinations for the Vegas Golden Knights. And again, not easy. Top line: Eichel, Barbashev, and Keegan Kolesar. Tomas Hertl, second line center with Victor Olofsson and Pavel Dorofeyev on either side of him. Brett Howden, Brandon Saad, Mark Stone are the third line. Probably be the Islanders' first line, second line at the very least. Nicholas Roy, Tanner Pearson, Raphael Lavoie, that's the fourth line. Nicholas Hague and Alex Pietrangelo are the top defensive pair. Braden McNabb, Shea Theodore, the second pair. Noah Hannafin, Zach Whitecloud are the third pair. The goalies: Aiden Hill and Ilya Samsonov. William Karlsson and Cole Schwindt are both listed as out right now. We'll see if either one of them return. Aiden Hill, a .269 goals against average, 19-10-4 on the year, a .900 save percentage. Samsonov, .274 goals against average, .899 save percentage, 12-6-2. Both goalies, by the way, the numbers are almost identical. For what it's worth, Aiden Hill got the start against the Rangers on Sunday. So odds are much more likely that we see Samsonov, but again, with 4 nations, it may not be that clear cut. Islanders are going to have to dig deep and play their best hockey, and they are going to need a very good performance by Ilya Sorokin if they're having any chance to pull off the win. Big game, because if they can pull it off, it changes the equation. These 3 games are going to determine the direction the Islanders go in. Let's see what happens, how they play, how Lou Lamoriello reacts, and where the direction of the team goes. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day, and Sunday was the 48th birthday of former Islanders winger Mark Parrish. The Edina, Minnesota native, third-round pick of the Avalanche in 1996, made his NHL debut with the Panthers in 1998-99, came to the Islanders in 2000-2001, and stayed through the later part of the 2005-2006 season. He had 5 different seasons with 20 or more goals, and he had a 30-goal season in 2001-2002, had 30 goals, 30 assists, and just a big contributor to the Islanders' success in the early 2000s. One of his better games as an Islander, November 24th, 2001, Islanders hosting the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, as they were then known, at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. The goalies, well, Steve Shields got the start for the Ducks. Garth Snow, the goalie for the Islanders. It was all even at 1 after the first period, but in the second, Mark Parrish, our Islanders' birthday of the day, gives the Islanders a 2-1 lead. Mike Pecco with the assist, and then a mere 21 seconds later, Parrish sets up Pekka, Mariusz Tchaikovsky, the other assist, and it's 3-1 Islanders after 40 minutes. In the third period, the Islanders are shorthanded, and Mark Parrish adds another goal. Claude Lapointe with the assist. Garth Snow had a double minor for high sticking, and Parrish comes through with a shorty. And then 2 minutes, 13 seconds later, Parrish completes the hat trick. Tchaikovsky and Pekka with the assist. Islanders go on to win this game by a score of 5-3, 34 saves for Garth Snow. But for Mark Parrish, our Islanders' birthday of the day, 3 goals, 4 points, a +4. He scored the game winner. He had a shorty, and he had 5 shots on goal, which led all Islanders players. Roman Hamrlik was the only player with 4, who was the next closest. Mark Parrish, an integral part of the Islanders' success in the early 90s. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. We will be back tomorrow. We'll have our key takeaways from this game. We'll have some updates as to what the Islanders are going to do, maybe some updates on Scott Mayfield's situation and his availability. Plus, we'll have our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR_VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.